the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. We are back once again to discuss the latest from the world of football, from the world of sport, and transfers are getting hot because twists and turns keep happening in this transfer window like we've never seen before. Yesterday, we thought Rodrigo Muniz was headed for Atlanta, and yet, by the time we woke up, he was bound to stay at Fulham. So, yeah, um, and that's what brings us tonight because Arsenal have made a late move for Eberechi Eze. So, we'll be discussing that and more in today's broadcast. So, do stay with us for purposes of this broadcast. Then we will get to speak about Kai Havertz injury. We'll get to speak about every other single thing that may interest you in from the world of football in terms of transfer updates and analysis. So do join me on this journey and let's get into it. Allow me further update my headline. Just to make sure that we touch everything. I think I'd missed out on something. I think I'd missed out on something. Oh, okay. Otherwise, how has been your day? Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay? How has been your day? Do let me know. How was your day? Where are you joining us from? And I'll be reading all your comments as of when they do come through, by the way. So yeah, like today we are not late. Today we are on time, exactly on time, 11 p.m. 2 minutes past, actually 3 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. The Dani in Kampala, Uganda, where I do come to you live from. So yeah, join the broadcast and then we'll get the conversation going. On the other side, allow me have our audience tested. Make sure everything does check out. It does help that we get things right and we leave nothing to chance. Newcastle have come out with a post saying that they have no intention of selling Isak. Yep, they put out a statement in response to Alexander Isak's statement that did come out last night, and we did digest that in the morning. But also we will continue to digest it further this evening and see what that means. What are the implications of that kind of statement and what the statement tells us. So good evening to you everyone who is just joining us. Welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. My name is Robert Kesakos and I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's about 4 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. Welcome to the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but more importantly, consider please subscribing to the channel and help me to 2,000 subscribers. So tonight we'll be speaking transfers. Like Pedro puts it, Tottenham have agreed with Crystal Palace for the signing of Eberechi Eze. That's what we were all led to believe, or that was the agreement in place or in principle between Tottenham Hotspurs and Crystal Palace for the 27-year-old England, attacking midfielder. They did agree to a deal in principle of about 55 million pounds as guaranteed fees plus 5 million pounds in achievable add-ons or in add-ons. Mr. Jellybean says hi Jellybean. Jellybean seems to be a Barcelona fan. Says I'm new. Good to have you on the broadcast and on the channel. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Pedro is asking, are you a Barcelona fan? Please say yes. But at least his badge says it all, doesn't it? Or his profile picture or display picture says it for him, he says, finally, I have a friend. So, again, just like I mentioned it, or like Pedro put it, we're all living under the knowledge that Tottenham had agreed a deal in principle to sign Eberechi Eze from Crystal Palace. A deal had been agreed in principle for the transfer of the player worth about 55 million pounds plus 5 million pounds in expected add-ons, and that came a couple of days ago, and until today morning we did not think that Arsenal were going to revive their interest in signing Eberechi Eze. Now, this morning, unfortunately, news surfaced that Arsenal's Kai Havertz had suffered a knee injury, one to which we are yet to find out to the full extent of which it is, but we did put out a video on the channel discussing that injury and what it means to Arsenal and what it could be based on the early signs that we've heard about. Could it be an anterior cruciate ligament injury? Because it is sort of a bit similar. Hi, Uncle, I have an opportunity for you to move to Canada. I'm a university student and I can hire for internships from abroad. That's a comment from Houdin. Hi, Houdin. Welcome to the Footballtribeug channel. So, news came out that Kai Havertz had suffered that knee injury. For those of you that want details of our discussions about Kai Havertz's injury, please go to the channel, check under the video section, and watch that video. It's only about 8 minutes, so it won't take you long. Please watch it, like it, comment, share, and also give me your views about that. Hi, tester of life. Welcome back to the channel. It's good to have you. How has been your day? He completely ignored you, Houdin. He says, are you from Congo? No, I'm not from Congo. I'm from Kampala, Uganda. But thanks for asking. I didn't ignore him. His comment is way beyond the scope of our current discussion. So I will return to him back later. So anyways, like I said, we woke up this morning, no expectation of Arsenal making a move for Eberechi Eze. Tottenham had a deal agreed in principle for the transfer of the player. He has already agreed to personal terms with Tottenham Hotspurs. What was being left to agree on with Crystal Palace is a payment structure for what was left to be, sort of discussed or agreed upon was the payment structure of the £55 million plus the £5 million in expected add-ons. So, and then fast forward, we do learn during the course of the day that unfortunately, Kai Havertz has suffered a knee injury, and according to multiple sources, the extent of that knee injury is yet to be known. But it is feared it could be a long-term injury. And when that news broke, David Austin went on that the expectation is that he could be out for quite a spell. So in my perception, I mean, the reason as why I came to the remote thought that it could be an anterior cruciate ligament injury, God forbid that it is that, is because you remember Julian Timber in the 2023-2024 season when he had just joined Arsenal on the opening weekend of the season, when Arsenal were up against Nottingham Forest. I think they won that game. Was it by 0-0 or so? So he suffered an anterior cruciate ligament injury, had a slight limp, barely noticed it, went to the dressing room at halftime, and even returned for the second half, and until he eventually walks off. Everything was normal for him. He walked normal. He did not feel the instant pain that we saw James Maddison feel when he went to the ground during preseason in their game against Newcastle. So that wasn't the situation. It wasn't similar to what we saw of Hector Bellerin a couple of seasons back when he went to the ground and when he had suffered a similar injury. So that wasn't the case. So even Kai Havertz came on around the 60th minute, replacing Victor Gyökeres against Manchester United on Sunday in Arsenal's 1-0 victory, and he played the 30 minutes. He did not seem to have an issue as he walked off. So I do not know if the issue happened in training. We are yet to find out. Maybe it happened in training. But yeah, he suffered a knee injury, and we are waiting to know the extent of what that injury will look like in as far as his season is concerned. Now, in the wake of that injury, it was reported that it was reported that Arsenal were exploring the market to try and see if they can find, not replacements, but solutions within the transfer market to try and bluster their attacking positions. Okay, let me read some of your comments. Hi, completely no, I answered that. Nigeria, I'm from Espana. Pedri, exactly how about you? Mind your own business. Oh, how did it get to that? It was a good day. Very hot. Very hot. Summer is around the corner. Uh, oh, summer is around the corner now for South Africa. Okay, that's interesting. How is it, Pedri? Okay. Shadia Gianluigi Donnarumma is now a step away from joining Manchester City. Then I'm good, Pedri. Okay, most of you have been exchanging greetings down there. No big questions pertaining some of these topics, but I've seen your comment, Pedri. We will get back to it in a bit. So again, now we were there waiting to see what. Of course, everybody thought that Arsenal are going to go maybe intensify their pursuit of a left winger. Is it going to be Rafael Leao? Is it going to be Rodrigo Goes? Is it going to be Antonio Gordon? As of this morning, majority of reports pointed Arsenal in the direction of Morgan Rogers, and yet that didn't seem to remain the case. You know, it didn't seem to remain the case as the day wound up, because just over an hour ago, just over an hour ago, David Austin did a reveal in an exclusive that Arsenal have made a move for Eberechi Eze, 27-year-old, wants them. Tottenham lined up a deal with Crystal Palace today and player, but after Havertz's injury, plus AFC now closing in on England international, if he proceeds with choice, Tottenham will pursue other targets. So that was about an hour ago. So we got that. And now, just 2 minutes ago, Arsenal have reached an agreement in principle with Crystal Palace to sign Eberechi Eze. Deal is worth around expired 68 million release clause, matching what Tottenham were ready to pay. Matching what Tottenham were ready to pay. Personal terms clause plus 27-year-old plays for Crystal Palace on Thursday before Arsenal medical. Now, looks like, according to David Austin, there is an agreement that Eberechi Eze be allowed to feature for Crystal Palace tomorrow night against Frederickson in the UEFA Conference League before he can proceed to Arsenal to undergo his medical. Hi, Boss Royal. So Eze gets to choose. Looks like it. He gets to choose. Good evening, Boss Royal. I hope you're okay. Wojciech says, hello, boss. All the best for you. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Wojciech. Good to have you back on the broadcast. It's been a minute. We haven't seen you in about a week or so, but I hope you're doing well. I hope, okay, yes. Frederickstad. Yes, that's the correct team. Yes. Apologies on the, mispronunciation of the team. Then, just as I said, Benfica against Fenerbahce just started a second half, and it's still 0-0. That's in the UEFA Champions League qualifiers. Those ones do continue. Okay, but Boss Royal, it's a pleasure to have you back. Okay, Crystal Palace will win. Fredrikstad is from Norway, and they battle to score. Boss Royal says, next podcast, wear your Ugandan national team shirt if you have one. Unfortunately, the one that I had got worn out, so I need to secure another. And once my budgets permit me, you will see it when I don it. I'm sure you've seen me don a couple of jerseys. But yeah, I look forward to donning a Uganda Cranes jersey. More so if they go up and beat up against against Senegal in the quarterfinals of the African Nations Championships. That game is on Saturday at 8 p.m. at Mandela National Stadium, Nambole. So it's coming up really, really soon. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's from that side. So now, Arsenal's pursuit of Eberechi Eze is very directly. Have Uganda ever AFCON? Are you asking, have Uganda ever won the AFCON? If that's your question, no, they've never. But in 1978, they reached the finals. They reached the semi-finals and were beaten by Ghana by 2 goals to 0. So no, they've never won the AFCON. We've never won it. And it was after about 39 years that we went without qualifying for AFCON, and then eventually we did qualify for AFCON 2017. We did not do well in that competition. Then we qualified for AFCON 2019. We reached the round of 16 and lost to Senegal by 1 goal to 0. So it is going to be the first time that Uganda gets to play up against Senegal since 2019 in Egypt, when they met at the round of 16 in the Africa Cup of Nations. So this time around, it's in the African Nations Championship. So the African Nations Championship is the African version, more like, of the UEFA Nations League. Look at it in that context, so that it doesn't confuse you, whether it's the same as the AFCON. So, anyways, like I said, we're still talking about the Eberechi Eze news, how it is tied to Kai Havertz. I did, for those of you that have followed this channel for quite some time, you remember I did put out a video arguing why Arsenal needed to sign 2 strikers. We made arguments for and against, but more importantly for, and this sort of pre-qualifies that, or makes that even more valid at this stage, because what we were arguing then was that Arsenal needed to sign not just 1 striker, but 2 for purposes of their numbers. Now, when you look at the attacking forces, you have Kai Havertz, who was destined to be the de facto backup, striker for Victor Gyökeres, now injured for a period that we are yet to know, because the extent of that injury is still being assessed. The correct diagnosis is yet to be known, and how long he will be staying out with that injury. So when you look at what other Arsenal's options are, right now you have Victor Gyökeres, very good signing, but he's yet to click, he's yet to settle in, and we cannot, we do not know how long it's going to take him. Is it going to be 2 months? Is it going to be 1 month? Is it going to be 3 months? We do not know. As we wait for that, you remember Gabriel Jesus just in January, I think, he did suffer his own anterior cruciate ligament injury, which sent him into surgery, and he's now still in rehabilitation. He stepped back on the grass to kick a ball here and there, but his expected return date is yet to be confirmed. So what does that mean? It means that Arsenal are left with just 1 option in Victor Gyökeres and a makeshift Mikel Merino, who we saw between February and May last season play for Arsenal as a striker. Basically, Arsenal are literally back to where they were last season. Now, part of the reasons as to why I was making the argument that Arsenal ought to make to sign 2 strikers is I looked into their backyard, and you do not see any youngster of a striker sort of coming through the ranks the way you had Eddie Nketiah previously, because Arsenal knew that if all our main strikers or forwards are down, we can always call up Eddie Nketiah. At the time he was still at tail end playing in the academy, but we could call upon him maybe to start a game or 2, maybe to start in the Carabao Cup, maybe to to play the last 20 minutes of the game and things like that. Now he's since left for Crystal Palace. Florian Balogun, that one was equally moved on to AC Monaco after a long spell with Reims in France. Then also Mika Biliath did also leave eventually. He first went to Austria before making the switch to join AC Monaco in France. So, and then the last sort of striker that was close to making that step forward was Chido Martin Obi, who last summer left Arsenal and joined rivals Manchester United. So that meant that Arsenal are blank on that end. So when you look down their, sort of climbing path for a striker, you do not see anybody popping their head out. And that's why my argument was always Arsenal need at least that second striker. Then you say, make sure you beat Sadio Mane. I do not like him because he used to elbow people in the face when he was playing for Liverpool. Now, Senegal is a very, very strong team. I'm sure you don't need any reminders about that. In any case, England just played them in a friendly and they lost that game. That's beating. They did beat up against UK by I think 3-1. So they're that good a team. So even with their own domestic team, they remain a very, very important opponent. They are the defending champions of the African Nations Championships. So, yeah, they're very, very solid opponent for Uganda. Now, in football, anything can happen. Uganda can overcome them. But given Uganda's display against South Africa, we really, really do not go into that game with a lot of positivity because, I mean, we conceded 3 goals in the second half. And had it not been for the late drama that it was, winning 2 penalties in the last, 8-10 minutes of the game, we could have easily been knocked out. We would have already packed our bags, and players would be out of camp by now. So yeah, I will be rooting for the Uganda Cranes, but I must be honest. My expectations are not high in terms of Uganda winning. My hopes are dimmed following that performance against South Africa. Really. So has Uganda ever played in the Prem? What do you mean by the Prem? Has a Ugandan ever played in the Premier League? Not that I know of, but one that was close was called Nsereko. He did feature at West Ham. Then there's another youngster at Manchester City who, according to reports, could be promoted to the senior team. He's called Marvin Mukasa. I think Marvin Mukasa. But the surname is Mukasa. However, the mother is a UK citizen, and then the dad is Ugandan. So chances are he may choose to play for the UK. You know how that boils down. But I'm not aware of any Ugandan that has played in the Premier League. And part of that has always been with some of the regulations within the Premier League when it comes to players that come from certain leagues or certain countries. At least you must have made this number of appearances for the national team, things like that, blah blah blah. And so there's no known Ugandan, at least known to me, that has ever featured in the Premier League. Wakanda forever. I do not know how to pronounce your name because I'm not sure if that's Chinese, Korean. I do not know, and I won't even labor to try. It's actually crazy. Senegal is the first African team to beat England. Yeah, I mean, they're that good a team. They are that good a team, and they are capable of those things. So, back to the gist of the topic, back to the gist of the conversation. Again, I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. But according to multiple sources, that Arsenal's pursuit for Eberechi Eze is really, really sort of being fast-tracked. And like I told you, the latest report from David Austin says that a deal has been agreed in principle to sign Eberechi Eze. Deal is around the expired release clause of £68 million, matching what Tottenham Hotspurs were willing to offer. Now, I know before you guys ask me, you just said Tottenham had agreed £55 million plus plus £5 million, taking it to the ballpark of about £60 million for the transfer of the player. Why are you now talking about £68 million? The issue about transfer figures is that they're often subject to speculation. Oftentimes, we settle for ranges as opposed to the exact figure, unless it is a release clause. And even when it's a release clause, given the way clubs keep cards close to their chest, it oftentimes ends up being subjective in its own nature. So Testa says Eze must come to Arsenal, and I mean it has been a public secret that if it boiled down to him choosing between Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspurs, that he would choose Arsenal, particularly because of his history. He does support Arsenal. He did start his career as a youngster at tail end before he was released at the age of 13, and we all know what the kind of career path he sort of took. He he did have a stint at Fulham. He went to Ipswich Town before going to Queen's Park Rangers, where he had a couple of loan spells, and then he sort of blossomed between 2017 and 2019. And 2020. In those a couple of seasons, in his final season with Queen's Park Rangers, he did score, I think, about 14 goals and provided about 8 assists for them in the championship. And then that's when Crystal Palace decided to snatch him and sign him for about 19.5 million pounds, according to multiple sources, although other sources cite that it was 19 million euros. So again, you can see how those figures are oftentimes reported in difference. Then Boss Warrior asks, who do you think is the greatest Ugandan footballer? The greatest Ugandan footballer? That's a very, very subjective question, but I think I'll go with my opinion. Based on what I have seen, or those that have been lucky enough to watch a play, I won't talk much about the historicals, because in history, if you go back to history that goes beyond my immediate knowledge in regards to watching a player, either live or in moments, I would say David Obua. He did play for Kaizer Chiefs in South Africa. He was a very, very loved figure in South African football. He also got the chance to play for Hearts in Scotland under Lazio Zaba at the time when he was the manager at Hearts. So yeah, I would say David Obua. He was also captain of the national team. But when you go back to years back when Uganda was playing in AFCON, that was in 1974, 1978, and reaching the semi-finals, and eventually I think reaching the finals and losing by 2 goals to 0. You have names like Paul Asule. You'll hear of names like Jackson Mayanja and others. So it's a bit of a subjective topic in that regard. Tester says Bodo Glimot up 4-0 against Stamgras. Yeah, I think Mika Biliath did join Stamgras before making the switch to AC Monaco. So Eberechi Eze to Arsenal is a deal waiting to happen. Like I said, according to David Austin, he is expected to feature for Crystal Palace in their game tomorrow against Fredrikstad in the UEFA Conference League before undergoing his medicals at Arsenal. Because, it's a short trip that he has to make. Crystal Palace are within London, Arsenal are in London. So I don't know if Boss Royal is still here, but he would have blessed us with the knowledge of knowing the geographical separation between Arsenal and Eberechi Eze. How big a distance is it for him to make the switch? Otherwise, if it was a player joining from Arsenal to Tottenham, then it would have been a walkable distance on a given day. So, but anyways, for me, it's a bit of a surprise. I remember I was asked this question not too far back, whether Arsenal were going to sign Eberechi Eze, and that I said it looked increasingly very unlikely that they would make a move for him, that he would end up at Tottenham Hotspurs, because that's all wind blew in that direction, all compasses pointed in that direction. But it's the transfers. You can never rule out anything. You can never say never about transfers. Anything can happen. Anything can happen, and surprises do not end there. Like I said, just the other day, we're talking about Rodrigo Muniz going to Atlanta, and then suddenly Fulham changed their minds. Just for the laugh, 77 says, where do you believe Arsenal finished this season? Oh, just for the laugh, welcome back to the channel. I've missed you for the last couple of more than just days. I think it's been more than a week actually since I last saw you here. But first of all, when you go to the channel, there is a pinned video for you that talks about my entirety of predictions for the 2025-2026 Premier League season. So you'll find them there. But just to answer your question directly, my prediction is that Arsenal will win the Premier League title, so they will finish first. So you can go watch that video, find out what my rationale is, my thoughts, who everybody else finishes in terms of my predictions. the question now is, where do you think they will finish, in your opinion? Yes, it's been a while, but I hope you're doing good. I hope for whatever kept you away, I was for good reasons as opposed to bad reasons, that it wasn't illness or anything. Ha ha ha, I see you have drunk much alcohol, my friend. No, no. By the way, I mean, it's a matter of opinion. We could have different differences in opinion, but the question, like I said, I put it to you. Where do you think Arsenal will finish? Who do you think will win the Premier League title? Guys, by the way, speaking of the Premier League title, you've never given me your predictions. Majority of you, as far as I remember. Now, there's a difference between what you hope happens and the difference in what you think could actually happen. So, for example, if you're a Manchester United fan, you'd hope that Manchester United win the Premier League title, but you know for a fact that their chances of winning the Premier League title are very slim, and that you could predict that maybe Liverpool win it, or maybe Manchester City win it, or Chelsea, or Arsenal, But in terms of your own hope, even a Newcastle fan would hope that their team wins the Premier League title. I mean, if Leicester City did it in 2016, what's it not to say that any other team can come up and win it, So you say, I believe they will finish third. They looked terrible against Manchester United. Yeah, they did. They didn't look impressive against Manchester United. A lot of people, by the way, okay, not a lot of people, but a good number of people that I've seen have predicted Arsenal will finish third. They gave their own views or reasons for that. A good number of them have predicted that Chelsea will win the Premier League title. Others think Manchester City are going to reclaim their crown. Others think Liverpool will defend the Premier League title. Others think that Arsenal will win it, but if Liverpool get to sign Alexander Isak, then the tables will have turned. So, I mean, their predictions, it's a case of opinion. You have your justification. I may have mine, but at the end of the day, we all have our convictions as to why we think, or we may predict the predictions that we may give. You say, I think top four in order will be Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea. Okay. Tester says it's the first game, so I wouldn't speak so soon. I mean, for me, again, as bad as Arsenal looked, or as not good as they looked, I have nothing against them, by the way, whatsoever. I'm not worried one single bit, because they got the job done. They won 3 points at Old Trafford, something that doesn't happen very often. Go back in in Arsene Wenger's 22 years at the helm of the club. He only won at Old Trafford 3 times in 22 years. That was in 1998, in 2002, and in 2006. I do remember that occasion of 2006, because I stand to be corrected on this one, but I think I seem to remember that goal being scored by Emmanuel Shea Adebayo, as Arsenal won there. So then you have to sort of bring it forward. You have to bring it forward to Mikel Arteta in a spell of 5.5 years, coming on to 6 years. He's managed to win at Old Trafford on 3 occasions, and we're talking about the Premier League alone. We're talking about the Premier League alone. Because I know somebody may tell me, you remember when Danny Welbeck scored the winning goal in the FA Cup at Old Trafford, with Nacho Monreal scoring the equalizer? I think after Wayne Rooney opened the scoring. Yes, I do remember that. That was about I think around 2014. Yes, around 2014, when Arsenal reached the finals and beat Hull City in the finals to win the FA Cup, before returning to the final in the subsequent year, 2015, and then they beat Aston Villa in the final. So, yeah, I do remember that occasion, but that's not, that wasn't the Premier League. They pulled an Inter Milan against United. Again, guys, how many times? Okay, let's first answer ourselves this question. Would you rather your team plays really, really well, but lose a game, or would you rather them not have a good day in office, but still manage to walk away with 3 points? Because at the end of the day, it is those 3 points that matter. It's the winning that matters. The ends justifies the means. That's what it is in football. If you ask me, and guys, allow me for a second, speak as an Arsenal fan. If you ask me, would I take that performance all throughout the season if it means Arsenal win the Premier League title? Hell, I would take it. I would take it if it means that Arsenal win the Premier League title, unbeaten, winning just dirty, winning the hard way, winning by a goal to nil. I'll take that over playing good football and ending up not winning. So because we've seen that one too many times, you go and have a good game and you end up not winning. Particularly, I've made reference to that game between Arsenal and Manchester United at the Emirates Stadium in 2017-2018 season when Man United beat up against Arsenal by 3-1. I mean, Jesse Lingard was at the Emirates dancing like it was a dance floor. Why? Because he had been able to score a brace against Arsenal on a day that Arsenal played really, really well, had as many shots on goal as you imagine. But David De Gea was the best that he has ever been for a goalkeeper. He saved everything that was to save, by one opportunity that got past him, that goal scored by Alexander Lacazette, and Antonio Valencia opened the scoring for Manchester United, So I would rather Arsenal play the way they played on Sunday and walk away with 3 points than play good like Manchester United played and end up losing, So I would rather the result be the way it was. So I would take that on any single day, on any given day. And for me, I wasn't happy with the performance, but I was satisfied with the results because it meant 3 points. And because, guys, let's face it, when you're a team that wants to win a Premier League title, when you're looking through your fixture list, some of the places you're going to point out that are really hard to go and get all 3 points, Old Trafford is going to be one of those. And particularly for Arsenal, it's going to be one of those places. You're going to look at your fixture list and say, Manchester United away from home. That's going to be a difficult one. Liverpool away at Anfield. That's going to be a difficult one. And we know that that's the match day 3 for Arsenal, the trip to Anfield, because they play Leeds next and then make the trip to Anfield. You look at that game, after you look at your calendar back then, and then you have to host Manchester City. Whether it's at home or away from home, it's difficult. But away from home, it's even more difficult, So you look at the match day 6, I think Arsenal will be up against Newcastle at St. James's Park. That's one of the hard asks in present days. And then after that, I think maybe they have to play West Ham or whatever. So when you're looking at your fixtures, go back to the years of Sir Alex Ferguson. He used to sit with his senior players and they had the candid conversation. This game is a must win. That is a must win. This, if we pick a draw, will be okay. This, we could lose, but we'll try not to lose, And they mapped out games. That's how they were able to win titles for so many years. Players like Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, Rio Ferdinand, Roy Keane, those were some of the senior players within that team that you would sit with and they say, okay, we have a trip against maybe Stoke City. Maybe we know how difficult, Stoke City are. We remember how they used to play under Tony Pulis. In any case, as people made references that Arsenal are played like Stoke City, that Arteta is the new Tony Pulis, But Manchester United would look at that fixture and say, that's really hard to go away to Stoke City and win. But we must win because it is a winnable game, even though they are difficult to play away from home. So if you're a team that has aspirations of winning the Premier League title, then you must be making those kinds of moves. You must be looking to win some of what could be deemed as unwinnable games during the course of the season. At the end of the day, you have to grind it out, and that's what I saw Arsenal, particularly in that second half. They just had to grind it out and secure all 3 points, and they got the 3 points. They will look to self-correct going forward, but at least they will be satisfied that, they have all 3 points. Yes, Bodo Gilmut is 5-0 up. Thanks for the update, tester of life. Then, guys, quickly, I think we've discussed the Kai Havertz injury. At the moment, we do not know what the prognosis is at this stage, but there are fears that it could be a long-term injury. My personal worry is that it could be an anterior cruciate ligament injury. We'll wait to see. I really hope and pray that it's not that, because what a huge blow it would be for Arsenal, because I mean, the really, you remember, they've just come out of a period of having to terminate Takahiro Tomiyasu's contract just because of injuries, not because he was not a good player, but because of injuries. Then you have Gabriel Jesus, who ideally, I believe with every single fiber in my being, that Arsenal's intention was to let him go this summer. But he suffered that anterior cruciate ligament injury. We know one all too well. Bukayo Saka, hamstring. Gabriel Magalhaes, hamstring. Kai Havertz, hamstring. William Saliba had a minor hamstring at the tail end of the season. Julian Timber, an ankle injury. Ben White, a knee injury. So you come with that history of injuries from last season. The least thing that Arsenal want is in the first quarter of the season getting as many big injuries as they had last season. It won't look pretty. It won't look pretty. And we are one match day in, and suddenly you bound to lose Kai Havertz for a long spell. Well, I've seen some unscrupulous fans saying that if it has taken Arsenal maybe an ACL injury to Kai Havertz for them to make a move for Eberechi Eze, then they would rather Gabriel Martinelli suffers an ACL injury if it means it will force Arsenal into signing the left winger. Now, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. As much as you would want your club to sign a particular player or to sign a player for a particular position, the last thing you want is wish your own player such a serious injury, because it's one thing to suffer a growing injury that keeps you out of action for 2 to 3 weeks or maybe even 4, than, you see, an anterior cruciate ligament injury is an almost a season-ending injury. You remember, we've given the examples. Julian Timber, when he suffered it, he came back at the tail end of the season. You remember Hector Bellerin, Rob Holding, those are just Arsenal players. You've seen what is happened to Gabriel Jesus, You go to Real Madrid, Thibaut Courtois, Eder Militao, I think Dani Carvajal suffered a similar injury. You go to Roma, Nicolo Zaniolo, he did suffer that kind of injury. Look at Manchester City, Rodri. One of the reasons as to why Manchester City had a season that wasn't good enough by measure of their own standards last season is because Rodri or Rodrigo Cascante suffered that anterior cruciate ligament injury, So look at James Maddison. Part of the reason as to why Tottenham wanted to accelerate a move to sign Eberechi Eze is because of James Maddison's injury. You remember, they came into the transfer window. Yes, they already had some long-term registered interest in signing Eberechi Eze, but their priority was Morgan Gibbs-White. We know how that transpired. Morgan Gibbs-White ended up staying at Nottingham Forest, signed a new improved contract until June 2028, and then while in pre-season, in that game against Newcastle, James Maddison suffers an anterior cruciate ligament injury. He's already undergone surgery and is going to be out for a period of 6 to 7 months. Now, 6 to 7 months, let's say 7 months. That means by the time you return, the season has only 2 months left to eat. And by that return date, we never know. You could suffer a setback. You could take a bit of time to gain full fitness. That could take you another extra month. So that would mean 8 months. So for anybody that has followed football long enough, an anterior cruciate ligament injury is one of the worst you could wish for a player. One of the worst things that you could wish. I wouldn't wish it on a rival player. Not at all. For example, let's say the way I'm an Arsenal fan, and let's say we're competing for the Premier League title with Liverpool. Whereas at one point you may hope that maybe Liverpool suffer a couple of injuries to sort of have their season falter. The last thing I would wish for is maybe a Mo Salah to suffer, that kind of injury. I wouldn't. Tesla of Life says, I'm off now. Enjoy the rest of your evening, tribe. Everyone else watching, we'll be back tomorrow. Anyways, apologies on the background noise if you do receive any. There's a kid crying in the background. But anyways, quickly, let's also get to discuss Alexander Isak's future. Alexander Isak's future remains unresolved. At the genesis of this broadcast, Pedri mentioned it that Newcastle have come out with a post saying that they have no intention of selling. Now, they did say that in part of their statement, but more importantly, they did say that conditions that would facilitate a summer transfer had not yet been met. That what that implies essentially is that they are not hell-bent on not selling. They are open to selling. However, conditions that would compel them to sell have not been met. That's what they said. Those conditions have not been met. And I'm trying to see if I can dig out the statement from Newcastle. Yes, here is the exact phrase. They say, we are clear in response to Alex that Alex remains under contract and no commitment, and that no commitment has ever been made by a club official that Alex can leave Newcastle United this summer. So that's the first, part. And then in the second, in another part of that statement, they say that as explained to Alex and his representatives, we must always take into consideration the best interests of Newcastle United, the team and the supporters in all decisions, and we have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. They add on to say that we do not foresee those conditions being met. Now, what are some of those conditions? And again, we're going to use a bit of speculative language in this case. Indulge me on this one. So, sorry, there's a mosquito roaming around here. So, if you're Newcastle, you're telling yourself, one, I do not want to sell Alexander Isak. He's my best player. I would like to build on Alexander Isak and build a good project. But now that the player has made it clear that he wants to leave, in case I'm willing to entertain a sale, I must make sure that certain conditions are met for me to be comfortable with making that kind of decision. And what would be some of those conditions be? One, that a certain transfer fee is met, and according to reports, Newcastle have not come out to say this by themselves, but at least reports have suggested that maybe a fee in the region of 150 million pounds could turn their heads into entertaining a sale. Now, that condition, if it were to be the exact condition, has not been met. The only bid that came in for Alexander Isak was from Liverpool, worth about 110 million pounds. So which is lower than Newcastle's own valuation of the player. Two, I'm thinking that one of the other conditions would be that before they sanction a sale, they must have secured a replacement for Alexander Isak. Now, who has made that difficult? Liverpool being one of those clubs that has made that difficult, because they went on and signed Hugo Ekitike, who was a target for Newcastle, and made sure that Newcastle do not get Hugo Ekitike, which, by the way, could have helped Liverpool's pursuit for Alexander Isak. But, we cannot sit here and cry over spilled milk. Then they made a move for Benjamin Sesko. What happened? Man United beat them to the signing. Newcastle even offered more money than Manchester United, but the player chose Manchester United. So it's not like Newcastle have been unwilling to find replacements or players or a second striker, because they entered the market thinking we want to sign a second striker who can play alongside Alexander Isak. But should we find ourselves in a position that we must sell Alexander Isak, then at least we'll have had a potent replacement. And that's why Hugo Ekitike, Benjamin Sesko were being pursued. But before all that came to light, Newcastle had pursued a deal for Liam Delap. He ended up at Chelsea. They tried to pursue a deal for Joao Pedro. He preferred a move to Chelsea, and that's where he ended up. So, while we can sit down and criticize Newcastle's lack of transfer business or how its transfer prospects have failed, we cannot condemn them or we cannot convict them for a lack of intent. They've shown the intent. They've made the right moves in terms of bids. Bar a deal for Yohan Wissa, there's no player they've made a bid for, and they've been priced out for failing to pay the demanded fee. Negotiations were still ongoing with Brighton when Chelsea came and offered 55 plus 5 in expected add-ons, making a total of 60. I'm very sure Newcastle were capable of offering that. They are reported to have bid about £70 million for Hugo Ekitike. He ended up going for 79 to Liverpool, £69 million guaranteed fees plus 10 in expected add-ons. I'm sure Newcastle could have made that. They went with a better offer, overall offer, to RB Leipzig, and Manchester United still beat them to his side. Why? They offered more money, but the player chose Manchester United. So we can't really blame Newcastle that they have failed to find a replacement for Alexander Isak, which would help facilitate a transfer this summer. We cannot have that conversation. It will be a dishonest. It will be a dishonest conversation in its very nature. Then the other thing that on the other side that I want us to look at is the player. Now, my views about the player's behavior have been clear. I for one believe he's behaved unprofessionally to a large extent. But more importantly, if you're Newcastle, if you do came to this player power to say that you have a player under contract, but because he's not getting it his way, he's decided to go on strike and won't play for the club again. Now, if you do came to that, what is it to say that next summer you do not have some of your other big players doing the same or taking the same course of direction just because they want to leave the club? And I've seen a couple of people defending Alexander Isak, and they are well within their rights because they are entitled to their opinions in that regard. But one thing they've ignored, or one side of the coin they failed to look at, is putting themselves in an assumption, and it's got to be a mere assumption because it's not happened as such as of yet. Put yourself in the shoes where your own club has 3 or 10 players that are in protest, that are saying we won't play for the club again. We want to, want to leave the club. They've not handed in transfer requests. The club has not promised them transfers, but they simply come and say, we do not want to represent this club anymore. Yes, we are still under contract, but yeah, we won't be playing for this club anymore. And suddenly, you have 2 weeks to left the window, or even a month, or even if it's 3 months, and you have players on strike saying that they want transfers away. Are you going to care to that? So, at one point, or at some point, Newcastle, one, have to play their cards really, really smartly. And that's why their statement concludes by saying that this is a proud football club with proud traditions, and we strive to retain our family. Alex remains a part of our family, and we will be welcomed back when he is ready to rejoin his teammates. The key word, when he is ready to rejoin his teammates. Now, what does that imply? That they are treading carefully when it comes to what they say about the player, because they know 2 weeks down the road, or in the next 10 days or 12 days, the transfer window could close, and Alexander Isak is still a Newcastle player, and he has to be reintegrated within that team. So they're leaving those arms wide open. It's not to say that he won't be penalized or he won't be asked to apologize to his teammates for his behavior, because look at Eberechi Eze. A lot of transfer speculation surrounding him at this point, and yet he is staying professional. He's trained today. He's ready, I believe, to play that game against Fredrikstad tomorrow in the UEFA Conference League. So you have that example. I've also used previously the example of what's his name? The example of Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz did want a move away from Liverpool. He communicated that to Liverpool, but he never went in protest. Now, to be fair to Alexander Isak, certain promises were made to him by the club, and those promises have not been fulfilled or were not lived up to. And particularly, he did say in his statement that, allow me read this out. He said, the reality is that promises were made, and the club has known my position for a long time. To now act as if these issues are only emerging is misleading. When promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship can't continue. That's where things are for me right now. And why change is in the best interest for everyone. Now you can see he talks about promises. Now, what promises were made? Now we've discovered that the promises that were made to him were supposed to be of an improved contract for his performances after the 2023-2024 season. Around that period, that's when those promises were made. That around that period, he was, before actually the end of the season, he had been promised a new improved term contract. And those promises apparently were made by Amanda Stevali and her husband, Madad Godosi, who made those promises of a new improved contract. Now, at the time of making those promises, the new improved contract would come with an increase in pay, but it would come at a time when his current contract still had 4 years left to it. Now, fast forward, a CEO is appointed at the club, who is Darren Eales, and then he appoints Dan Ashworth. Actually, this was Dan Ashworth is appointed. Now Dan Ashworth ends up leaving the club as sporting director. He joins Manchester United, where he did not work out, and then Paul Mitchell is appointed. Now, Paul Mitchell had worked with Darren Eales at Tottenham Hotspur. Now, when he gets appointed as new sporting director, of course, he makes his assessment of the club and the players where they are, and he looks at that sheet and he says to himself, look, mate, I'm sure his Isak's representatives must have reached out to the club to find out about the update of a new contract. And he must have said to them, look, you have a 4-year contract. You're already one of the best players in this club. We have these things to worry about, the profit and sustainability rules and everything else around the club. So no, we're not giving you a new contract right now, but we're not saying we cannot discuss it in the future. So at that point, disappointed that the club were going back on their own word, he decides to say, or to tell the club that last season would be his final season at Newcastle, that it would be his last at the club, at that point, according to reports. Now, just because he informed the club that last season would be his last season at the club does not mean that the club are obligated to sell him. No, they are not. Because, like I keep saying, he is a player under contract. So, last season ends and he still has 3 years left for his contract as a Newcastle player. Now, if his agent envisioned this kind of move, and I'm sure he did not, because we are not told enough to see what will happen tomorrow. Now, maybe he would have sought some form of protection, like a release clause, because a release clause usually works in protection of a player, that should he want to leave the club, he will, let's say, inform potential suitors that, look, I have this kind of release clause in my contract. If you meet those terms, then I will be allowed to leave and to join you, So it's got to be that. So unfortunately for him, he does not have that release clause in his contract, which puts him in a bad spot. So whatever Newcastle say is his valuation is what they'll stick to. And if nobody meets that valuation, then they'll simply tell him, look, we were willing to let you go, but nobody was willing to meet our valuation of you, which is this fee. And for as long as nobody has met that valuation, we can let you go. So what do? You have to stay and play, because again, you're under contract at the club. So there's all sorts of sides to look at this thing. But for me, in this particular case, I'll defend Newcastle. They've attempted to find replacements. They've not been as successful at that. Yes, it's not the fault of the player, Alexander Isak, that the club have not been successful in finding replacements for that. But like I said, Newcastle are not obligated whatsoever of letting him go just because he's asked to leave. Just because you ask for permission, it doesn't mean it will be granted. In other words, in any case, when you're asking for permission, you ought to expect two things. That I'm asking for this permission, but they could either say yes or they could say no. What if they say yes? Then I'll execute for whatever the goal it is with which I'm asking for that permission. What if they say no? Then I'll have to step put, or I'll resort to this, or I'll take this measure, or maybe I'll persuade them in this direction. And for me, I've always been of the school of thought that regardless of even if Newcastle had signed a striker, which they haven't, they've made, for example, today they've had a bid of £40 million turned down by Brentford in their pursuit for in their pursuit for excuse me in their pursuit for Yohan Wissa, and that deal was expected to be in the region of £40 million, £35 million as guaranteed fees, plus £5 million in expected add-ons. So that again was revealed by David Austin. Said Brentford turned down latest offer from Newcastle for Yohan Wissa, bid worth £35 million plus £5 million are rejected. Brentford sources insist that target price on the 28-year-old striker never given to anyone. DR Congo International determined to secure move to Newcastle, determined to secure a Newcastle United switch. So again, there's that. Now, in similar fashion with what is happening to Yohan Wissa, there is reports that he was promised that he will be let leave for about £26 million this summer after Ivan Toney had left. We know Ivan Toney left for Al Ahly in the Saudi Pro League club, where he's really done well for himself. Now, fast forward, you have Yohan Wissa, who Brentford are saying, no, we're not letting you go, by the way, until we find a replacement. But also, bearing in mind that they've already lost Brandon Bomo. But while he's had his own means of protesting by, rubbing everything off his socials pertaining Brentford, he's not refused to train, to the best of our knowledge. He's not refused to train, So Brentford could equally be taking that direction of, we'll see out the window. But anyways, sources have also suggested that Brentford want at least £60 million if they are to let go of Yohan Wissa. Now, for me, £60 million for a 28-year-old Yohan Wissa, who until last season had never scored 15 goals in a Premier League calendar season. Last season scored 19. There's no way you're convincing me otherwise. Yes, he's a late developer, pretty much the way Joan Felipe Mateta is. But them being what was worth £60 million, I'm not convinced. Really, I'm not convinced. I'm not really convinced. Then also, anyways, in other news, Manchester City are close to an agreement with Rico Ruiz over a new contract. Existing deal does expire in June 2028. Talks over extension to 2030 plus an option for a further year, and no release clause will be inserted. Nottingham Forest pursued signing the 20-year-old, but he is poised to stay at Manchester City. Then also, Nottingham Forest did reach an agreement with Juventus to sign Douglas Luiz. The deal for the 27-year-old Brazilian midfielder is a loan plus buy mechanism for Nottingham Forest at about €30 million. Obligation based on games played or option if Brazilian international falls short of required appearances. So, and that's the situation with Douglas Luiz. Excuse me. So then quickly, let's move away from that and discuss other news, because there's also news from Brighton. Bluco reached an agreement with Brighton and Hove Albion to sign Julio Enciso. Personal terms are in place with the 21-year-old Brighton midfielder plus Paraguay international expected to initially spend time at Strasbourg, but viewed as a long-term Chelsea player. Now, Bluco is the company that owns Chelsea as well as Strasbourg. That's Tony Body and his friends. So yeah, that's just coming about 19 minutes ago from David Austin about Julio Enciso. is going to be signed to Strasbourg, and then 1 season later or 2 seasons later, they'll be joining Chelsea. I mean, those two guys have been trading with themselves like it's a marriage between the two. Like it's a marriage between the two. So we'll wait and see. Then quickly, this is also from Ben Jacobs, who says Arsenal will pay an initial £60 million plus add-ons for Eberechi Eze, move to be formalized later this week. AFC's July approach for Eze key as he was sold on the move before Spurs. Spurs also reached an agreement in principle with Paris, but AFC now completed a hijack. That's according to Ben Jacobs. He also did mention a couple of minutes earlier on that Eze was finalizing personal terms ahead of a move to Arsenal. No issues as financials are outlined in Eze in July. AFC with an agreement in principle for similar ballpark at what Spurs. Now, if I'm Arsenal, I should be trying to convince Crystal Palace while they are going to sign Bilal El Khanos to also return to Arsenal and sign a player like Fabio Vieira, very, very decent player. I don't know. I have a feeling that maybe a team with lesser pressure could unlock his potential because he is with full talent, very, very talented player. Maybe the physique of the Premier League is one that has not always worked for him. But I mean, we've seen players play and they are weak physically, but they thrive because Bilal El Khanos is not the most physical player in any case, and he's just a player with that kind of skill set. And I believe in a team that has a bit of less pressure, like Crystal Palace, who are also going to be playing on the continent in the UEFA Conference League, then it gives you the perfect opportunity. So maybe you pitch them the idea, you float the idea, then we know that Crystal Palace want to sign a centre back. Jakub Kiwior is a target for FC Porto, and FC Porto want to get him on a chip of about £23 million. And they want him initially on loan with an obligation to buy. For me, that's too little. That's too little money. I mean, Benfica just sold Alvaro Carreras for €50 million to Real Madrid. If Arsenal were approaching FC Porto for the same player at the stage he is at, they wouldn't be budging on that kind of fee. But it is what they're offering. And again, we've spoken about this before as one of the challenges when it comes to big team selling, or when it comes to teams like Arsenal selling players. Because what you have, or what you get to experience, is that the teams that want to buy oftentimes from these big teams do not have the kind of financial muscle that those big teams have. And that's how big teams oftentimes end up with lesser transfer fees. For example, if you're Real Madrid and you're selling to Arsenal, you're going to demand for top dollar. If you're Real Madrid but you're selling to Valencia or Sevilla or Real Betis, then you know what to expect. You know what the expectations are going to be. If you're Juventus selling to Inter Milan, you can ask for top dollar. But if you're Juventus selling to Spezia or Monza, you know what you're going to get. It's just the nature of business, unfortunately. As much as it is not a model that serves the best interests, there's nothing Arsenal can do if top clubs who have the money are not interested in their players. And we know they want to move on. Fabio Vieira, Rhys Nelson, they want to move on. Albert Sambi, maybe Jakub Kiwior. I think Christian Mosquera is giving them more encouragement, and then Ricardo Carafiori can play in that left centre back wall. You can play there, you and Timber. Of course, he wouldn't give you none of them would give you the same performance that Gabriel Magalhaes does offer you, but there are options. So then Karl Hein, could be a target for, I think, Stuttgart in Germany. So we'll wait and see. But those are some of the transfer rumors and speculation making the rounds. Then also Bournemouth are exploring a move for Chelsea defender Axel Disasi, as Sacha Tavoridi did reveal. Chelsea prefer a permanent exit, but different formulas are being discussed at this stage. Bournemouth, I think, already at good terms with Chelsea, having already signed George Petrovic. form the same side this summer as their number one goalkeeper. So a deal can be done. Then also, okay. This is coming in from Fabrizio Romano. Okay, we've spoken enough about Eze. Then Chelsea Strasbourg are closing in on an agreement for Julio Enciso from Brighton. That one we discussed. Again, okay. Then Leeds, Noah Okafor from AC Milan has passed his medical to join as a new Leeds striker. So that deal is going through. Then Rasmus Højlund and his camp have made it clear to Napoli, RB Leipzig, and AC Milan, and all clubs interested that he prefers a loan with an obligation to buy. Højlund always wanted to stay at Manchester United, but if he has to leave, then he wants to be guaranteed. To feel a total confidence. So there you have it as well. Anyways, quickly, we're going to be reverting to the latest from the transfer gossip desk and speculation as compiled by BBC Sport, and we see. Then Chelsea, by the way, Chelsea really selling, and this is according to BBC Sport. Chelsea sales have reached £250 million as a Renato Viega fee has been agreed. And this report, according to BBC Sport, it says Chelsea have agreed to sell defender Renato Viega to Villarreal for a fee rising to £26 million, taking total player sales to over £250 million for the Blues this summer. And I know a lot of you are going to be wondering, how is that possible? Now, Renato Viega on his way out to Villarreal, Noni Madueke left and joined Arsenal, George Petrovic left and joined Bournemouth, that's a goalkeeper, Kepa Arrizabalaga left and joined Arsenal. You had Leslie Ugochukwu join Burnley, as well as Amado Brocha for about £25 million and £20 million for those two. That's a total of about £45 million. Then, which other players has left Chelsea? You had Joao Felix. I leave the club, for Al Nassr in a deal worth about £43.7 million, rising to that. Then you had Kenan Brisbane Hall leave Chelsea for Everton in a deal worth about £28 million, possibly 29. With all add-ons included, but the initial fee is about £25 million. So for those of you that keep wondering how Chelsea are able to keep signing players, because Chelsea will make a substantial profit on this Renato Viega deal, because he only played 18 times for the club after joining them from FC Basel in 2024, for only £12 million. And now they're selling him for more than double that, really. So initially, there was more interest in Renato Viega, but it looks like it's Villarreal winning that race, and again Villarreal continuing to strengthen their squad, which is already a very beautiful team. But you really understand they're going to be in the UEFA Champions League. Then also Chelsea remain interested in signing Alejandro Garnacho. Now, this is and if I'm Manchester United, I'm not doing it anyway, regardless of what it means for Alejandro Garnacho or what it means to Man United. Chelsea want to pay about £30 million for Alejandro Garnacho, 21 years of age. Now, Man United are telling them, you can't sell Noni Madueke, 23, to Arsenal for £52 million, a total package, and then you want to be buying Garnacho for 30. You cannot be paying £48.5 million plus £3 million plus £3.5 million in expected add-ons for Jamie Giddens, and then you're expecting us to budge on Garnacho's fee. You just signed Joao Pedro for £55 million. I mean, why should we entertain less? So, if I'm Man United, especially when it's Chelsea asking, and yes, I know Alejandro Garnacho has made it clear to Manchester United that the only side he wants to join is Chelsea, and he won't be joining any other clubs. I would rather see it out. I would rather see this one out because, one, he's still a young player. Two, still on a long-term contract with Manchester United, so there's no threat on the contract situation. And they are trying to sign Xavi Simons as well. So there's no reason for them to match. But then Chelsea are also still trying to offload more players. Christopher Nkunku is on his way out of the club. Raheem Sterling is expected to leave. Ben Chilwell is expected to leave. Axel Disasi, we've just talked about him, that is of interest to AFC Bournemouth. And then Nicholas Jackson. Nicholas Jackson is a player to watch in this transfer window. However, I think he's been overpriced. It's the same way you go to a supermarket and find let's say a pineapple at 5,000, or that's at about $1.5. Yet in a farmer's market, it goes for $0.5. So that's how I look at it with this with Chelsea's valuation for Nicholas Jackson. But it is what it is, you know. Anyways, let's quickly run to the latest from the rumor mill and what it has for us as of this late evening from the latest around the gossip. Then again, will be Arsenal are weighing up an offer for England midfielder Morgan Rogers, 23, but Aston Villa will only entertain offers in the region of £80 million. That's according to the Sun. RB Leipzig have agreed personal terms with Liverpool and England under-21 midfielder Harvey Elliott. As a Netherlands midfielder Xavi Simons, 22, looks close to completing a move to Chelsea. You know, that's according to Florian Plettenberg, who works with Sky Germany. Then Marseille are interested in signing 29-year-old Greek left-back Konstant Tsimikas, who is expected to leave Liverpool this summer. That's according to Foot Mercato. While Manchester United and the striker Rasmus Hojlund and his camp, we've just discussed this, have made it clear to Napoli and RB Leipzig that he prefers a loan move with an obligation to buy, and maybe this interest from those two. Then Nottingham Forest are in talks to sign Sevilla's 23-year-old Spanish right back Jose Angel Carmona. Yes, that's according to Sky Sports. While Forest are also exploring the possibility of reuniting with 28-year-old Poland and Aston Villa defender Matty Cash. That's according to The Athletic. Everton still want to sign new players before the deadline, especially a winger, and could make another bid for Southampton's English forward Tyler Dibling, at 19 years of age. That's according to Sky Sport. Aston Villa's Alex Moreno, 32, is on the verge of joining Girona after the Spanish left back agreed to reduce his wages. That's according to The Athletic. Tottenham are stepping up their efforts to sign Brentford and Ireland defender Nathan Collins, 24, who has also attracted interest from Liverpool. That's according to Court Offside, while Sacha Tavoridi reported also about Bournemouth's interest in Axel Disasi. So that's it from me. Do let me know what your thoughts are on those views, on everything that we discussed. Let's continue the discussion in the comment section after this. But thank you so much to all our new community members, people that have recently subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you join the community. We hope you do enjoy your stay with us, and that you continue to stay for long and be active members, not silent partners or dormant partners. You know, in business, there's such a thing as a dormant partner. So we've now hit the mark of 1,500 subscribers. So remember, our target for this month is 2,000 subscribers. That's the objective. But without you, we cannot make it happen. So please consider subscribing to the channel, but also liking our content. Meanwhile, if you're interested in learning some digital skills like coding, web design, and cybersecurity, do not hesitate to check out our friends at EboState. They are based in Kansanga, Kampala, Uganda. They do offer trainings for those courses, both in person and online. So if you're interested, please do check them out. You'll qualify for a 5% discount should you decide to sign up with them. Then quickly, I wish to say thank you to Pedri. Thank you so much, Tester of Life. Thank you so much, Mr. Jellybean. Thank you so much, Just for the Laugh 77. Hoidin, thank you so much. Wojciech from Poland, it was a pleasure having you on today's podcast. Boss Royal, Always nice to see you around. Peter Parker, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. I hope you're doing well. And every single one of our semi-regular and regular suspects that have missed tonight's broadcast. Pressing Kosi has disappeared on us for a while now. Safa Ali only reappeared the other time and disappeared. Who else? Today I've not seen LFC. Then Snow, LFC, I've not seen him. Who else? Tristan, and all of you guys, But let's look forward to tomorrow. I hope I'll see you in the morning and we'll expand on those discussions. So it's been a pleasure doing this with you. I hope you have yourselves a wonderful rest of the night. Stay blessed and bye-bye. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.